Hello, friends. Welcome to episode number 110 of the Modern Persian Food podcast. Bita and I are going to do things a little bit differently today. We want to take the opportunity to express our feelings about what's going on in the world right now and the turmoil and the uprising that's happening in Iran, and just share with you the journey that we've been on over the last month and a half about the different emotions that we've had and the outlook that we now have, and take the opportunity to talk to you. It's been kind of a crazy ride, and we've been not sure about what our approach should be and what we should be diving into, but we felt that it just didn't feel right not to take the time to connect with our listeners and kind of share where we're coming from and how we're feeling, and also give you the perspective of what it felt like growing up as an Iranian American or a Persian American, however people want to identify with themselves, what it felt like kind of growing up outside of Iran, and just some insight about our connection to our culture. I'm here with the lovely Bita Jun. Hi, Bita Jun.
Hi.
Thank you for taking the time today to sit with me so that we can talk about this important topic.
You're welcome. I'm glad that we're having this conversation. It's my hope that you, listener, is also kind of wanting to hear about it, maybe having some similar feelings. Maybe you're also of Iranian descent or children of immigrants from Iran or somehow connected. And so even if you're not, to be honest, if you have heard or seen anything that's been happening, I would think that you have been touched from a human rights and just sort of from a human perspective. It's been quite a month and a half. Yeah, feelings have been all over the place, up and down. It started with the shock of the killing of Mahsa Amini, and, it just kind of like halted everything. If we go strictly to talk about social media, we went from posting and sharing and talking about food on there to just, it all stopped. And it was sort of like, what do? We want to get the word out. The internet was shut down. It was so horrible just to see it in your hand. And for me, just the shock and the fear and the sadness and kind of the not knowing what to do. And I did make a video. I did share. And I'm glad I did. Whatever 5,000 people watched it, which is great. Maybe one more that didn't know about what's going on and the injustices for women and for people and the lack of freedom in Iran. But also, it just sparked a lot of conversations with family and friends that I don't think I otherwise would have had. And it made me realize, how much have I been suppressing and, not talking about this stuff. And, I think I had gone on a walk with a friend shortly after it all went down. And she's a really good friend of mine that I've had since, college. And I was talking to her about everything, and she didn't realize, I had to go through my whole history, and she didn't realize, wait, your mom wore a bathing suit on the beach? Your family had all this freedom? Our family lived in Iran and kind of moved here by choice a good 8-9 years before the revolution, which isn't the norm. But I was here for the revolution. My family kind of watched it, how we're watching things happen now from here. And now I'm kind of feeling like what my family went through, what my parents went through. And yeah, I've been kind of educating my friends, it was really free and open for women and for all, and very Western prior to 1979. And a lot of my friends didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, the last 43 years since the revolution started, the country of Iran has just been portrayed through a lens of just, not enough education really about what Iran is, what Persian and Persia is and was, and the art and culture and science and mathematics and all of these really amazing pillars of society where so much of that all began, the epicenter really of so many cultural elements thousands and thousands of years ago was basically forgotten because of the portrayal of what's going on in Iran in the last 43 years. So we're not a political podcast. We really just want to share culture. We're just sharing our experiences and our identity as it relates to culture and being Persian. So I'm not going to be able to kind of be a historian and give you all of the background. But the point is that the people running the country were not necessarily representative of the majority of the people in the country who are living there, and mandated dress codes and other elements that took the freedom away from people in general and women. And so over the last 43 years, if you see media, if you don't have a personal connection inside of Iran, you may think that this has always been like this, that they've always had suppression and limiting of rights and things like that. So I don't blame the people here who don't know, who haven't been exposed to that and have only just seen Iran in the lens of the media, because that's like, the only thing. They turn the TV on, that's what they see. And they see these really horrible images, that doesn't really give respect to the people and the society and the culture. So yes, there is a lot of education that needs to happen across the board about sharing. That's part of like what we do, on a weekly basis with the podcast, and just trying to share culture and the holidays and the passion really of Persian people. And we do that through food. We use food as the conduit that helps us connect even more to our culture and to spread that with our community. So yeah, definitely. I agree that a lot of education does need to happen. But like before 43 years ago, before the revolution, before that, yeah, it was completely free. I mean, I remember my auntie telling me that like when that did happen 43 years ago, that they wanted to go to like the fair or like the park thing. And then they were like, oh, no, you can't come in without a hijab. You have to put a scarf on. So they were like, well, we don't have a scarf with us. What are we gonna do? So they went and like cut like part of their like skirt or something, or just something, and did like a little scarf thing so that they can just say that, oh, I have a Russetti thing. I have a little scarf, to be able to go into like this like amusement park or whatever it was. So it was mandated on the people. My point is that like, yes, what you were saying is, yeah, before 43 years ago, beaches, vacations, so much like freedom and art. And like, I remember stories of people saying that, oh, they would go to France all the time. And even the shops in Paris and in France would have all the prices written in Farsi, because they had such a large clientele base coming from Iran that they sold so much that like all of the price tags were in Farsi. And so that, because they had so many customers and stuff. And it was just such an international cultural hub that if you didn't know that, if you don't know your history, you would never have known that that was the background.
Yeah. Very sort of metropolitan fashion, again, up and down of emotions, sadness, fear, worry, but then also this like, wait, I want to like share. I want to go over to my mom's and go through all the photo albums. When was that one time I went to Iran when I was 8 years old? And I went to my uncle's wedding and we went to the Caspian Sea. I want to see those pictures. I want to show my friends what we were all wearing. I want to show them like this good time that we had. And so it was an interesting sort of wave of events and things that it spurred inside of me. And it was like, then I heard recently, if you follow Roqe Media, Gian Gomeshi did this beautiful essay. It's just so powerful, and it just hit everything I was feeling. It's titled The Uprising and the Rebirth of Iranian Pride. And let me tell you, every word of what he said was like something that I felt. And that was when we watch the protests that are happening here all over the world, Los Angeles and Germany and, Canada and
Tokyo, San Francisco, a lot of places internationally.
It just is such a like proud and happy and exciting feeling, and just brings tears to my eyes to watch them and to be like, yes, Iran. I can say Iran. I don't have to say Persian. Look, we're Iranian. We're not terrorists. We're not bad people. We're humans, and there's so much culture. And it's just like, definitely like this uprising of pride to be Iranian again. And it just made me really excited and happy to kind of see the whole community at large supporting in the way that we can from afar.
Absolutely. I felt very similar. feelings. So Roqe Media has a podcast that Bita was talking about, and they've been covering kind of what's happening in Iran right now. But up until that, hearing that latest one, I mean, I couldn't even really open social media without getting this overwhelming depression and sadness because of like the helplessness that I felt and like the struggle and path that I saw that needed to happen to make change. And it just seemed so overwhelming that I was just so saddened by it because I didn't think that it was going to be able to happen. It's going to be so hard to have change across the whole country that I just didn't think it was going to be possible. But that was like a month and a half ago. It's been a month and a half of like this like really depressing, just because a lot of bad things have been happening. I mean, really, really bad things. And we don't need to get into it in this platform right now, but a lot of really horrible things have happened. And so, we're finally getting to the point now where after listening to Jian's kind of like intro to that episode, I felt a sense that we're getting to the tipping point. We're getting to that point where we're getting wind behind us and we're getting the momentum and the inertia that we need for change to happen. And instead of feeling helpless, I get what he's saying. I get that connection of pride and hope. And I want to say that I heard that a lot too at the beginning of this kind of new uprising, of this next round of revolution. I heard of people in Iran being so excited and so happy and energized that they were going to be able to make change. And I've gotten that now. And I feel that now. We're going. We have the masses. We have the support from an international basis of the people who want change. And when it's this powerful, change is going to happen. And I feel very hopeful now. So I do want to say thank you to Jian and team for really putting that and really kind of just changing my outlook on it a little bit, that I'm now hopeful. And I think that that's like a world of difference now.
Yes. This is incredible. I'm so glad I forwarded that episode to you.
I know.
I hope that we can share just a little bit of that so that it has the same effect on you listeners. It is just really uplifting and hopeful.
What we are witnessing is nothing short of the rebirth of Iranian pride. And this is a thank you to the girls, women, boys, men of Iran inside, fighting for change, inspiring the world, creating the conditions where we are finally turning the tide. The rebirth of Iranian pride. Oh, we hear from voices within the borders of the homeland saying this is the case. How nihilism, resignation, and fear of their own assertions are being erased. But it's also happening across the diaspora. An unstoppable energy that is spreading. Berlin, wow, Toronto, LA, Sydney, Vancouver, London, Tokyo. Finally, the world is seeing a different side because of the women on the front lines leading the way, because of the artists, the activists, the workers and students who will no longer stand silent. They're not just changing Iran, but restoring our own self-identity.
I'm glad we had the opportunity to touch on where we are with all of this. And, part of what we talk about is kind of finding our identity and connection to our culture. Mm-hmm. To be honest, I have felt a little bit conflicted about just talking about food right now. But the reality is that it's so much more than food when we're talking about food. Mm-hmm. It's years and years of feeling like you can't talk about being all of the Iranian things that we are. But this is a safe way to connect with our culture. Everybody eats, everybody enjoys food. And, I give myself grace now. I see now when I take the time to look back on sort of the history of what's happened, I was such a delicate age. I was like 11 or 12 when the revolution happened in Iran and the hostage crisis and all this hate. I didn't want to be Iranian. I didn't want to be a part of that ugly thing, and so I stepped away for a lot of years, and it took a lot of personal growth and maturing to realize that, hey, there are beautiful things about our culture. I want to be more about this culture. And even though my family, we were in small Midwestern towns where it wasn't always comfortable to say you're Iranian, and we had to be Persian. And my dad always tried to create a pride through, listen, look at the beautiful Persian carpets. He took it on as a complete hobby to learn all about different kinds of Persian carpets. He became a kind of a little collector, and he would lecture and you'd teach me. And Persian cats. And these are all things that were like friendly, cuddly, cozy ways to be Persian. And then, of course, the food. It always brings back to the food. And it's so much more than food, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. There is so much more to just the food. And first of all, we pride ourselves with the podcast that not only do we talk about food, we have really interesting guests come in giving different perspectives. We talk about the culture. We talk about holidays and ancient holidays and traditions and rituals and sharing all of those things. So we kind of pride ourselves in being more than just like the food that you just eat. But if we did want to just hyper focus on that, food, and especially Persian food, there is so much passion and love and background that goes into every single bite and history and rationale of why you want to pair this food with this food. We were just talking about that in a previous episode about like the hot and cold elements of food. Like there's reasons why we eat that, and there's reasons why we come together and gather around like a sofre at times of like initiation of the new year with a sofre hafsin, and when you start a life together with someone in a sofre ard, and like these other like pillars of culture that really feed into what we call just food, so there's like so much more that goes into it. So yeah, it's been a little bit of a struggle because, we want to continue sharing that, even though it felt like the world kind of around us was falling apart. But I just want to say that first and foremost, thank you to the people of Iran who have put themselves on the front line and are really instituting change and pushing so hard and putting their lives in danger and their family lives in danger to make sure that everyone is getting the basic human rights that they deserve. And these people are paving the way for other countries and other places in the world where there may be inequity. So I want to say thank you to them. I want to say thank you to the people outside of Iran who have been, showing up at protests, at freedom rallies, posting on social media, sharing, making people aware of what's going on. So, there's a lot to be thankful for. And it's been about a month and a half. It's going to take more time for change to happen, but this is actually a really like pivotal time for Iran as a country and for us outside of the country, being able to still support not only the people of Iran and our culture, but also our families now here too. Like we have these holidays coming up. We have times of embracing family coming up. Thanksgiving is just around the corner. We got holidays coming up. Soon it'll be the beginning of the year. And I think just a matter of being able to show up for our families, for our community, for our culture, and for ourselves. It definitely takes a lot to do all of that.
Absolutely. I'm thankful as well for all the things that you've mentioned, all the people, and very hopeful. I think there's a beautiful song going around, and I'm wondering if we might find a translation for it. Women, Life, Freedom, Zan, Zendagi, Azadi. It's a beautiful song with deep sentiment and meaning, and it's really our hope and our dream for freedom for Iran.
So similar to your family, Bita, my family came actually before the revolution too. They came, I think, probably right around the same time that your family came. And I was born here, and I was born actually right around the time of the revolution. So I've been a very sensitive person all my life. And I kind of sometimes think that it was because of those really crazy times of the hostage situation in the Iran-Iraq war happening and all of that kind of happening right at the time of me coming into this world. Both my parents are Persian, but I was born and grew up here in the United States. And I didn't have to go through that experience of being aware of like the hostage situations currently happening at the same time. I wasn't an adolescent at that age. I was just a baby. So I didn't get that. But being from a country where people like just didn't know about, and what I was referring to earlier about like their portrayal of the country just from what they see on TV, the very extreme cases of things happening. So it has definitely taken a lot of self-confidence to be able to embrace culture and identity. And I think that we chip away at that every single day.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm guessing that having your family nearby and being amongst a little bit more of a community was helpful to you and your parents. And I know my parents had a community of friends, and we moved to Michigan because of my Dad's oldest brother, so that we had some family. But there was a lot of years of sadness, and I just really feel for my mom, because once the revolution happened, prior to the revolution, my grandma would come to visit. Her siblings would come for extended stays. And then after the revolution, things changed, and, she would still visit, but there was just a lot of sadness, kind of a deep, dark sadness hovering above my parents not being able to really experience their homeland in the same way. That was quite hard. So for us, it was almost like a coming home, moving to California, because there's just such a larger community of Iranians. And just for my parents anyway, to feel a little bit more comfortable and find their place here was in some ways easier. And of course, I'm married into an Iranian family. And in the early days, honestly, I married because his family felt like home. And it was also like a very positive and loving and safe place that my parents felt really good about joining and being a part of. And my in-laws are absolutely welcoming in that way. And we're going to talk about, the holidays and Thanksgiving. And we've been blessed to always be able to bring our families together that way. It's been nice to share this way. And I appreciate you sharing your journey and allowing me to share about mine.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you everyone for listening to this conversation. We just really wanted to kind of share our perspective with what's going on and kind of our background and our Persian American background and history and identity, and really just bring you guys along with us as we have these feelings and what's going on in the world and in our communities. Let's see, Bita, is there an Ask the Beats that we can chat about today to round out the episode?
Yeah, we have a question from Danny from San Jose. And Danny wants to know, what have you been cooking lately?
Fine. Hey, Danny. Thank you for the question. I could go ahead and start because I kind of been wanting to actually tell you about what I made the other day. So the other week, your daughter, actually, Layla June, asked us a question about like foods that we had. Her Ask the Beats, which was just a call-in Ask the Beats, which was really fun. And if anyone would like to submit a question, please feel free to use a voice memo message to us or through Instagram and send it, and we can play your voice on air like we did Layla June's. And her question was about fall, winter type foods. And I had talked about June. And I made June after that episode. So I had a friend visiting and he had requested, he's a listener too, actually, and he had requested June. So I made June, but I made some different additions to it. So I just wanted to kind of walk you through it. Do you want to hear about it?
Yes. I have a huge bag of walnuts that I picked up, and I definitely see some June in my future. Let's hear. What'd you learn?
Okay, so first of all, I used already ground up walnuts. If you have a food processor and you have walnuts and you want to ground them up yourself, like more power to you. But he was coming over on a Tuesday, so I was trying to take as many shortcuts as I could, to be honest with you. So I used ground walnuts and I used chicken broth. And June typically is the ground walnuts with pomegranate molasses and some sort of like chicken or poultry or really whatever that you want to kind of use as your protein, but typically it's poultry, or you can actually go vegetarian or vegan if you want to. But what I added to it, because it is the season as well, and I had it, and I really wanted to give the June like a little bit more of a lusciousness, I added pumpkin to it. I used canned pumpkin in my June.
Oh.
And I loved it just because it kind of really gives a little bit more silkiness to it. And it is the season for pumpkin, and it doesn't have like a strong pumpkin flavor to it. And the other thing that I used, my pomegranate molasses, I like went through like a ton of it in the recipe. It still didn't have like the perfect flavor that I wanted. And so I used plum puree in there as well. I had plum puree from before, and I actually had stashed it in the freezer. So I knew that I had it, and I was like, I just wanted something that could have a little bit of like a sweet tartness to it that would also like give it really good flavor that wouldn't overpower it. It wouldn't have a strong flavor that it would like take away from like the pomegranate molasses elements of it. And why I'm actually telling that and sharing that part with you is that, you can adjust recipes a little bit, you know? If you want to add more tang to your fisanjun and you don't want to just use pomegranate molasses, I use plum puree. You can use lemon juice. You know, you can kind of use other sour things to add like a little bit more of like a depth of flavor.
Yes. I love a good sour fisanjun. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, me too.
Was it sweet enough? Did you need to put sugar?
So, you know, the pomegranate molasses that I have was actually pretty sweet. So I didn't actually need to add any more sugar. It wasn't super sour either. So it was nice. It was a nice balance of like sweet and sour. I think actually, to be honest with you, the pomegranate molasses I use also has date syrup in there. Date syrup is the brand that does it. And I think they put a little bit of date syrup in the pomegranate molasses as well.
I sometimes put date syrup in my fisanjun.
Yeah. So anyway, that was like something that I've been cooking lately. I have a few different events coming up that I'm hoping to incorporate some Persian flavors too, but we'll just stick with fisanjun for today. How about you? What have you been cooking up?
Well, to be honest, we're just closing out on 2-3 weeks in Orange County where it's just been my husband, Bobby, and I, and the dogs. So when we were down here, I don't cook as much because, well, it's just the two of us. And also we have fabulous Persian restaurants and markets. Well,
Oh, I'm so jealous.
there was something that I discovered that I want to share with you.
Uh-huh.
And it has to do kind of with digestion. I picked up just a huge batch of kebab and rice and salad shirazi and mosto musir and mosto khiyar, all from Mission Ranch in Orange County, which has such delicious takeout. You've actually gotten to taste it too, Bita June.
Yeah, I've tasted it, but I've never been there. It sounds like such an amazing marketplace, really. Like you've mentioned that has like, they're making fresh bread. Tell us about it.
Fresh bread and all the different Persian varieties, halim. But what I discovered was, I think you know, if you've been a listener, I have a little bit of digestive issues. I sometimes can't handle too much like fatty red meat. But we have just 2 episodes ago had Candace Walker of Proportional Plate talk about hot and cold foods. And so I did a little self-experimentation and I was like, you know what? I'm going to eat this. I'm going to eat the kubide and the bag and the juje, but I'm also going to eat it with the salad shirazi and the mast. So salad shirazi, you know, so I'm going to balance the richness of this fatty meat with the cooling agents of the salad shirazi and the yogurt. Like it was a huge meal, but I'm like, I'm going to eat it the way I'm supposed to eat it. And guess what?
What? You didn't have a stomachache?
I did not have a stomachache.
Oh my goodness.
Yay.
Yay.
So it works.
I love that.
It works.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, sure.
That's so cool. I love that.
Hot and cold foods, the sard and garum and sardi, it works.
Yeah. So if you haven't listened to that episode, go listen and you can battle your food challenges as Bita June has.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Bita June, for having this conversation. Thank you, listeners, for listening to us. And we are excited for the holidays to come. So tune in next week. We are going to be talking about Thanksgiving. We have some fun things in store for you guys. Okay, thank you. And with that, see you next time.
See you next time.
زندگی آزادی